Alright, welcome back. This is part 2 of episode 1. We're continuing right on to the next clip. This one is a hour-long clip, basically. And we're going to continue on. We're finishing up this build, and then we're going to go on to the next one. And as I was talking in the last part about John Wayne, he was in a movie called The Quiet Man, which was he was an Irish descendant, and his mother had immigrated to America. And in the film, he was a boxer, and he kills a guy in the ring. And traumatized by this, he swears off boxing, and he decides to go move to Ireland and run a little farm there, and which he does. And so that was sort of my inspiration for our Six Ashes farm. And in there, your role-playing is basically a person who's inherited a farm, and you're moving to the UK. In this case, it would be Scotland. The actual map is from England, and we based ours in Scotland because I felt it'd be more challenging there. And when we do that video series, which hopefully will be soon, that would be a fun challenge, I think. I feel my skills in Farm Sims 19 is at this stage decent enough that I could get through on servicing other people's fields through the year, and then on the side get our farm going. But I think on the current map that I made, I think I made a mistake by developing the sheep farm, and I think we should have started with pigs. As an early farmer, I think you would go further with pigs because they're very easy to maintain. As you grow into it, you can slowly acquire enough fields that you grow enough food, but you only really need in the early years to grow enough food and build enough service into it that you can buy the pig feed early on, and then slowly over time, as your other fields come online, corn, canola, I think barley is another one, soybeans. You only need the corn for your 50% feed, the canola for 25%, and then I think the other thing you need is soybeans or a cheaper crop, and for the remaining 25%. And you would have that, which you could easily get. The first year, you just simply grow the barley or corn, which is your main crop, and then you would need a secondary crop to act as your cash crop, which I think you could trade off from corn to canola, and then when you come back the next year, acquire a second field, you could grow the soybeans. And I think it's soybeans. It might be another. There's a third one. I think it's soybeans, but of the three, that's what you would need to grow, so that your pigs are living comfortable. But pigs tend to, especially if you're doing the whole entire operation from farrow to feeding operations, you would pretty much invest in the female pigs, and they would be artificially inseminated, and then as they grow and have male piglets, you sell off the male piglets once they come of weight, which takes a year for them to come up to weight, and you can sell them off on a yearly basis and make a very decent profit. And then you only have to buy the initial set of pigs, and then they go through like a 4-month period where you're growing the piglets. Not sure what's happening here. It's like the video skipped. What's going on? I'll leave that in. I don't think it's worth editing that out. But, one thing I was considering as I've been sitting here doing the voiceovers, I just got done editing the first video, and now I'm working on the second part. And instead of doing all the recordings on Tuesday, I was thinking since we play the game live 3 hours out of the night for 5 days a week, I could just record it on the PlayStation. Since that's how we got the video now, and that would give me a raw feed, since what we're streaming is done through OBS Studio, and that's played through my laptop. So the PS4 is really just playing the game. You just need to record it, and that way you get a clean copy of what you're doing, and then I can sit down and edit that on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursday mornings. I think that would be a more easier schedule. So you're only recording 5 days out of the week. That's 3 hours each day, which would give you 3 videos. And then per week, that would be 15 videos at a time that you'd have to process. And you don't have to process it all in 3 days, but I think it would be easier because that would take 15 hours to download. So you do 3, I would set it up so like when we go off stream, you start transferring the videos over to the PC, and then you slowly delete them off out of the PlayStation. That way you don't run out of memory on the PlayStation. Each file's about 3 gigabytes, roughly, just under 3 gigabytes. And so I'm thinking of standardizing the recording at about 50 minutes. So it'll always be less than 3 gigabytes. And then, so if you play 3 hours, usually the first hour we play, it's not a full hour, but it'd give you about 3 complete 45 minutes, and then the last video would be less than 45, or yeah, 45 minutes or 50 minutes. And then we could record the DC Universe stuff, because that's usually the second game we play, and which is a 3-hour period, and that would be much easier recording. And I don't record World of Tanks, so it'd only be those 2 games that we're recording during the week, and I think that would be easier to transfer over. And then slowly prep them for YouTube, because there isn't any reason why they have to come out like that day. You could just process them all at one time, make the videos, and then slowly process them during the week, because my office hours are usually from 9 p.m. to about 10:30, and that would be a good time to process videos. And then when I go to sleep from noon to 5, roughly, you could then process the videos on the back end, because an hour-long video takes a couple hours to process, and then format or what they call format, but render, and then you could upload them to YouTube in batches, like on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. You could upload them in batches. That way they're ready to go come Friday, and that would be a pretty good schedule. Initially we're backlogged because we didn't have a good process. So figuring out what that process would be and how to do it manageably, and I think going forward between now and the end of January, we could actually get ahead. And thus we're only processing for Sims 4, World of Warcraft, Farm Simulator 19, and DC Universe, and Star Trek Online are the only series we're doing on YouTube. So that would be a fairly easy thing to do, not to mention writing and producing our video novels, which we call Movels. It's a term I made up. And anyway, here we are. We finished that job on field 49, I believe, and we're going to move over to field 48. So I came over here to grab some lunch, and on the field, because we're role players, we actually go back to the house, go to the kitchen, and that's how we process our lunch. Now again, through this first video's episode, I'm going to play the in-game music, and then I won't know until we upload it to YouTube if that will be hit with a copyright. I don't think it will, because usually with game music it's usually free open access, and you just need permission for that, and more than likely they would just demonetize your video. We're not planning to monetize our videos, so, and our channel is an adult channel, so they usually don't they usually don't monetize those or put commercials in those. So one of the benefits of writing adult fiction is you don't have to worry about them putting commercials. But I think if our channel got big enough where we were driving a very large audience, then that policy would probably change. They would find a reason to monetize us, I bet. They would, I think. But there's nothing we can do about that, so it's just an ecosystem that we live in. So it's now 13:27 on the farm. If this is the first video that you're watching, welcome. This is part 2 of the whole series. Hope you find part 1. But in that case, I'll repeat some of the information. More importantly, if you're new to Farm Sims, we're playing with the Seasons mod, a Precision mod, and the Star Harvest mod. And on the top right corner, you'll see the first icon is the weather report. And they actually go in 3-hour intervals in season and not 2-hour intervals. If you look at the weather report for the day, they go like 6, 9, noon, and 3. So they're 3-hour intervals. And then usually you get a forecast for the next one. And they give you a 7-day forecast going forward. Since we're on an 8-day week, 24-day season schedule, we get an 8-day forecast. So the next is soil temperature, and we're using Celsius currently. The top number is the air temperature, and the bottom number is the soil temperature. Soil temperature is calculated in the real world by a 10-day average. So based on the actual temperature of the soil, someone goes out, measures that, and they do a 10-day average, and based on that 10-day average, they give a report for the soil temperature. I imagine in the game they use a similar system, but because we're on an 8-day week and 24-day season schedule, I imagine it's modified to an 8-day schedule. And that's how soil temperature is determined. And soil temperature is important because each seed that you plant requires a different temperature to germinate, take root, and that pretty much dictates what you can grow and when you can grow it. And usually in the springtime you want to plant a crop that can survive a drought. And then because you're going to harvest it in the summer, and then in the summer when you harvest your secondary crop, your winter crop, autumn crop, you want something that can not require a lot of maintenance, a lot of water, because this tends to be drier in the autumn, and it tends to be wet in the spring and summer. At least we're playing on a Georgia geo, and that's true to the crops we're growing. That might be, if you're in a along the equator geo or far north of that, your geo would be quite different than ours. But next, we're on the 11th day of autumn. Again, each week it starts over the 1st of autumn through an 8-day period, and 9th autumn is the new week. So we're 2 days into the new week, or 11 days into the current season. And that means we're only 2 weeks away from winter. Next is you have the clock icon. There's an analog clock for those of us that know how to read an analog clock. And for those that aren't familiar with that, next you have the digital clock, which is pretty much the same information. And the number below that means we're on a real time scale. So we're in real time. And then to the right is the monetary. That's how much money we have in the bank, and it's in dollars. And we're currently using Celsius because I'm not really familiar with Celsius, and Celsius really isn't a metric. It's similar to metrics in that 0 degrees is the freezing point of water, and 100 degrees is the boiling point, and they have a 100-point scale, and from that it goes in increments of 10, and that's very similar to metrics. Metrics was developed by the French during the French Revolution. They were jealous that everybody was using the British system, so the people, when they took over the country, the peasants, they wanted their own, and they developed their own calendar system, their own clock. They changed the names of the week and so forth. And metrics are what survives from that. And if you didn't go along with their system, they sent you to the guillotine and beheaded you. It's one of the reasons I don't really like the metric system. But I feel as a person, because I have OCD and ADHD, I feel the empirical system is more accurate in that those analog systems were, when they studied these phenomenons and started measuring them in a scientific way, the standard that they used was for that particular purpose. And metrics is really a simpler scale which uses a lot of approximations, and it's based on tens. Everything goes in increments of tens, or decimal, or deca. And so if you're doing maths, that to me leads to a lot of errors, and that everything's an approximation because not everything is a factor of 10. Right? And I feel fractions are more accurate in that sense. Because when you're dealing with a quarter, half, or 3/4, the fractions take account for it. The radical, irrational numbers take account for that. So if you need your numbers to be very accurate, especially when you're dealing with chemicals and physiology, generally don't want things to be approximate values. If you're dealing with like rocket fuel and cryogenics, approximations lead to disasters. And you don't want that. So we're gonna get this field started here. This is the new field. I'm planning to buy these 2 fields at this point, but I want to harvest it because the other guy currently owns it, and he's basically paying us to what we would have did had we bought the field and then serviced it. We did service it for free, so I felt that it was better just to go ahead and cultivate these fields and then buy the fields and get paid for prepping the field. The entrepreneur in me said that was the way to go. And then so basically he's paying us to prep the fields that we're just going to buy the minute after we get done prepping them. And then we're going to let these 2 fields sit farrow through the winter. That way come the first of spring, we can plant cotton on this field. The other field, we're going to plant grass on that field. Grass on half the field and trees on the other half. Now what we're doing now is we are squaring off the field so that when we turn it over to our hired worker, or local labor guy, he'll have a much easier time. He doesn't have to deal with weird geometries. The computer AI or local labor, you know, they're not as skilled as us real farmers. So the simpler you can make the field, the better they're going to perform. Don't leave too many things to chances. That's how I say it. That's what I think. But when I prep my fields, and you'll see that in a little bit in this video, how I actually prep the field, I put a lot of thought into the field initially and how people will service the field, so that when you go to work on the fields, you don't have to do any thinking about it. It's already done. It's in the preparation of the field to begin with. So make it dummy proof pretty much. And then when you go later on and have the AIs service the fields, they're not going to do like weird things. And I feel deep down inside the modders in role playing, I refer to them as civil engineers. When they designed these fields, they were lousy at their job and they hate automated services, and they think everybody should be farming at, let's say farming is at a 1 to 12 point scale, 12 being the most skilled and 1 being the least skilled. They feel that everybody should be farming at a skill level of 12 no matter who you are, and that's absurd. That's just, to me, that's a waste of time and very inefficient. You want to set your fields up so that anybody with minimal skill training can come in and service the field. That way they don't spend a lot of time, which is a waste, and that's money, and we don't want to waste any time, we don't want to waste any money. And when you design fields with all these weird geometries, something more than 4 sides, polynomial polygons, all you're doing is that you're making it so that it's going to take you longer to service the field. Every time you add a new side to the field, like right here, see they put a tree in the middle of there, which is stupid. Now I originally wanted to chop that tree down because it infuriates the hell out of me, because look, we got to go all the way around this, but since we're going to buy this, I decided to extend the road over, and then in the easement, because I believe in proper easements, the tree would fall in the easement and then it would be out of the way. And I feel on some level that the map is named Lone Oak map, and that's the tree that the map is named after. I feel, as the historian and anthropologist in me, although a tree isn't an anthropod, it's a plant. But anthropologists tend to record history, and won't allow me to chop that tree down. I feel wrong on some levels that we need to keep that tree. It's like a historical factor, and I'm one to preserve history. And so I've been correcting the civil engineer mistakes I see in the field. I feel that a lot of the people, civil engineers at Giant, as good as they are, they're great artists, and they do put a lot of labor in making these maps, but none of them have learned about easements and why you need them. When you section off property, around the edge of the property, there's usually what's called an easement, and you generally do not service or build or construct in the easement. This one allows you to locate the property lines a little easier, but also it makes the build a little more serviceable. And that way, if they have to run public lines through there, like electrical lines, fiber optic cables, gas lines, sewer routes, they can go right down the easement. And should they ever need to widen the road out, you have a proper easement on there to do that. And usually when they build signs on roads, they don't put the sign right at the edge of the road because it'll be knocked over, right? And you'll be spending a fortune every year just having to fix that sign. So your highway engineers, along with your commercial property, farms are commercial property, not residential property, they usually add easements on the road side so that you can have your sign be a proper distance from the road in case one day you need to widen the road at some point. And again, as I said, run services through there. They would run it through the easement. And also, if you're irrigating your fields, if you properly set the easement up, because of the curvature of the earth, you'd want the water to go to the ends of the fields, and that prevents, what it does is it keeps the water within the field. So it would be maintain its hydration levels and drain the water properly. If you don't, then you're going to end up with marshes and wetlands, and you don't really want that with farmlands. You have to have a place for the runoff to go, drainage. And hopefully you want most of that moisture to go into the ground, but at some point the ground's going to saturate, and the roads usually are what are your water canals or channels, so that when the water flows off the land, the route that they're going to travel are the easements, which are usually the lowest part of the land. And that they act as water channels to move water around as part of your area. That's why when you build sidewalks, you have the little cuts in the sidewalk, especially if you build like big slabs like at theme parks. Why they don't build it in one continuous slab is because the edging acts the gutter, and that moves the water away so the water doesn't pool. And usually it will pool to drains or to plant beds. In theme parks or in a farm, you'd want the water to drain properly. And the field to the right there is my own field. I just got done prepping that, and that's set up for cotton. And, we're letting it sit fallow between now and the first of spring is just in 2 weeks, so that's not that far, long ways. So here I'm going to turn it over to I've turned it over to the local laborer here, you see. So now he's going to do this computer up and down technique, which is a good one. That's the way you should probably properly do a build. But I find it to be inefficient. Now we're going to move over to our wagon here. And I pretty much use this vehicle as my everyday running around vehicle. It's the one that gets, other than the telehandler, it gets the most usage. Go ahead and close this gate while I'm looking at it. We were moving animals around, servicing them earlier in the day, so I just turn the radio off. It's kind of getting on my nerves there, so I need a break from it. And in case our video gets demonetized, they won't you won't lose the entire video. Here we go. Try to keep my vehicles. We're still using kph at this time. Later on in the day, I switched over to back to miles per hour. I kind of go back and forth on that. I know I should probably learn to use the meters and kilograms in a meaningful way, that it's practical. And the only time I ever use it is in this game. So I found the Celsius to be very practical. We're actually almost done. We're 30 minutes into this video already. It's real interesting scaling the videos down to just under an hour. I'm used to streaming. I used to stream 12 hours a day, and then I scaled it back to 10, and then eventually to 8. I like the longer streams more than short streams. I find that 4-hour streams are just too short for me, and I don't really get anything. When I do the long streams, I get a lot out of it, and I feel like I'm working at that point. And so I settled on 8 hours, and actually we've gone to 9-hour format, because if you do 3 games a night, that gives you 3 hours per game, and it works out really well for our people. And then it gives me from 9 till noon to personal time, sort of wind down. And I like winding down with Farm Sims, and I'm thinking we were starting the streams with Farm Sims 19, then playing DC Universe at the 3 o'clock hour, and then at the 6 o'clock hour we would switch to World of Tanks. But I'm thinking we should start with DC Universe, then switch over to World of Tanks, and then at the 6 o'clock hour switch to Farm Sims 19, and that way, though the stream ends, we can continue recording for an additional hour. And then I schedule all my shower times in the 11 o'clock hour, so like 11 o'clock at night and 11 a.m. I do all my showering. So there's not more than a 12-hour period goes by that I'm not showering, because I have cirrhosis, and keeping my skin cleaned is very useful. And so I try to shower once every 12 hours, which involves soaking my feet while I shower, and that cleans my skin off, exfoliates my skin well, and cuts down on dry skin problems. And then, so I try to sleep around noon to 5, Friday through Tuesday, and then Tuesday is basically my Friday, and then Thursday, or Wednesday and Thursday are my Saturday and Sundays. So, and I do all my video editing on those days. So Tuesday is my day to like cut back. I can sleep till whenever I want, and I usually do catch up on all my sleep on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and do all the maintenance that has to for the site and around the house that has to be done. And then I do all the voiceovers at night, mainly for World of Warcraft. I do, because with that video series we're doing video dialogue, so there's no narration like with this in The Sims, where there's narration. And so that's done more as a story. Star Trek Online's the same way, it's done more as a story. And then DC Universe, that's sort of like this, where there's a narrator, which I kind of like, because I like speaking extemporaneously, and that's one of my strengths in life. And these videos help me to do that. It helps me to clear my mind, so when I sit down to write things, I sort of get it all out of my system, both verbally and in written form. And one of the reasons I like being a Twitch streamer and a YouTube video content producer is that allows you to incorporate all these different creative skills like writing, speaking, public speaking, extemporaneous speaking, illustrations, composing music. That's a really cool one. And then drawing, and then doing the animated stuff. We haven't been able to do the animated stuff because the original system I had was a quad 4 system, and Phenon quad 4, and we were doing everything on iClone at that point. We were up to iClone 5, and that system burnt up. I have the hard drive in storage, but I imagine by the time we're able to get another system, that information is not going to be usable. So we'll see. But the software, iClone is around $300, and to get all the other stuff to make it work properly, it's going to be about $1,000 commitment, because you have to get the initial software, and you have to get the Real Illusion pack that when you get people make stuff in other animated software that allows you to take that and then drop it into iClones, which if you get a lot of stuff from 3D Warehouse, SketchUp and stuff, that allow you to bring those assets into iClone. And then once we start making a lot of money, or a decent amount of money at this, we're going to be getting the Unity engine, and we're pretty much going to be doing all our animated and cinematic stuff, where we're doing everything but producing a game. Right? We're doing the character creations, we're doing the stages, are all going to be built in our digital studio, basically, and then designing everything on AutoCAD, so that it's everything's to scale. And then, so like if we make a map of here, this being Athens, Georgia, it would actually be a map of Athens, Georgia, and then we could have the way it looked in the 19th century, going back to the 16th century, in the early days of the settling of the country, and how it would have looked. And so you would not have to rip down the stages every time, and that would be a really cool asset to have. And then you just have to make for each individual project, you only have to add new characters and new assets for that. So that's kind of going forward, that would be a cool thing. But to start off, we're using iClone, which I like, and it's only for $300-400. You could do the work that you would do with a $1,000 system. You could do very inexpensively for our needs. That would work out pretty good. Pretty easy. But that was the envision for our video novels, which I call Movels, moving videos. And for now, if people access our novels online, which are on YouTube, they are using still photos at this point, which are going to be similar to the actual 3D models once we can get the 3D models up and running. That's going to be in the future, but all that rests on us updating our computer, which we're waiting on our income tax stuff to come back. And in the event that that happens, I'm thinking, I originally wanted to get a desktop, but I'm leaning more to just buying another laptop, because we're using a Dell, which is a dual core i3 processor. And I'm thinking if we upgrade to a i5, that would run all the programs that we're doing. We could run the software. You could get it for probably $500 or less. And so if the income tax is around $1,200 back, then you're only eating up $500 for the laptop, which includes its own display, comes with a camera, an updated camera, and we could utilize that, and it would have already a battery backup. And then we could just buy a network hub, which is really inexpensive, which we really need. And then you could just buy a regular shelf metal, like you can get those at Walmart for really inexpensive, that you could set the laptop on, and then you could just cool them because the bottom is open. And then this laptop that we're using, we could run it with the screen closed, and then you could run it at a faster processing. You could dedicate the processor to more to processing data than throwing up a display, which this laptop's already set up for OBS Studio, so you could do that, run all the OBS Studio on this laptop, and then use the newer one for all the games and video productions. And then with that, you could then purchase the iClone stuff and get all the supplementary things you need, and have enough money left over to probably get a PlayStation 5. But the main thing is we would get our computer stuff all situated, and I think that's the way to go with our stuff. Now, what we're doing here in the game, not to get off subject, is we gotta ride the horses. I try to do it before the sun sets. It takes 2.5 hours to ride all the horses. You gotta spend about 15 minutes. I have a timer that I run, so I know how long that is. And the course I made here, this little course, I bought all these fields and I made a little park in the interior side of the map. And they're mainly for the horses to ride them. This little raceway along, and you only have to do one lap, which takes about 15 minutes, or a little bit longer than 15, which gets your horse up to about a 300% or more daily riding, which gets their fitness up really quickly, and that maximizes your payout with the horse, and takes about 2 hours and 15 minutes, or 2.5 hours roughly. So it's almost 2 p.m. 1400 in the afternoon on the farm. So we want to get that in before 6:30 or 18:30. So if we start now, because we can let the hired workers do all the labors, and if they run into problems, we can finish riding each horse and sort of stop. And so my plan is we're prioritizing the cultivating jobs, and then the sowing job, and then if all else, we can move the fertilizing jobs to tomorrow. And then if all goes well, we can do them, start them today, and maybe with a little overtime. But we definitely want to get the cultivating. We started today doing plowing jobs, and we got those out of the way. So today we're doing the cultivating jobs at this point, which was in the first video. And then this is the last field that we have to cultivate, and then I'm going to purchase them and then prep the fields for plowing, and then fit the horses in that. And what ended up happening is we cut close to a guy on the seed sowing job. He ran into complications which required me to go fix. And that took a lot of time, and then I went and grabbed a shower while that was going on, and then so that cut into my ability to service the horses, because the voiceover is occurring on the 7th, and this video was recorded on the The PlayStation doesn't put a date, it just puts a time stamp. But it's saying it was recorded on the 19th, or not 19th. It puts a year stamp on there, and I guess it's a time stamp. It correlates because it says 2021, and 01 would be January. I guess 6 would be the day, and the 024, that's got to be the time. So I guess it was recorded on the 6th of January. And then, yeah, it's 2 days ago. So we were recording it in the morning, and then where we live, we have a energy plan, and the non-weekend days and non-holidays, the hot water gets shut down at 6 a.m. So if you're going to shower, the latest you could shower is in the 5 o'clock hour. And you got to make sure when you're showering that you leave enough time for the hot water to regenerate, because no one's going to have hot water from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. when the hot water heaters shut off. So if you don't shower by that time, you have to wait to the 11 o'clock hour to shower, which is why I schedule my shower time at 11. But on this particular day, I wanted to shower because I hadn't showered in over 12 hours at that point, and I don't like going more than 12 hours without showering. And then my skin gets all itchy, and then mainly because I have psoriasis. But so I had to get that in. And so while the game was going on, I went ahead and did that. I turned it over to hired help, so I didn't have to worry about him, and then I just had to go back to the house to deal with that. What you could do with this, one of the beauties of this game is it runs in real time, and you can fit all your domestic chores inside that. One of the things I do during our 9-hour stream is I do all the laundry at that time of night, because I live with other family members, and they mainly do their laundry in the daytime, so I do all my stuff at night. And generally works out great. And I always start the dishwasher at between 2:45 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning, 'cause that's when no one's using it, and that usually keeps the sink clean. And if you use the 4-hour cycle, that means it'll be done by 7 a.m. and then it's usually dried by the 10 o'clock hour, when the people get up and empty the dishwasher. I usually start the dishwasher and do all the trash and stuff at night. Maintenance all the cameras around the house. I do that usually on my day off. Got to recharge all the batteries, which each camera takes like 4 hours to recharge. It's a chore, but it keeps them going. So we have continuous coverage of the cameras, 24 hours a day. So I've been maintaining cameras a lot in the last year. Hard to believe it's been a year, but it has. So here we are. We're returning back. I went and built this riding facility, and the idea of it was if you got to certain days where you can't service the horses, you still need to do it, and we have that riding facility just for that purpose, so we can ride them at night. And but I prefer to ride the horses in the daytime, so that they can run a long distance. I think it's healthier for the horse, and probably better psychologically for the horse, that they get to go out. And horse is really an animal that likes to run and kind of be free and wild. And horses were domesticated by the Scythians. And if you follow the Amazon lore, our character here, she's an Amazon. They were the ones who domesticated the horse. The Scythians, they were descendants of what were the Cimmerians. If you follow Conan the Barbarian, he's a Cimmerian. They were the pre-Iranians who settled along the steppes of Asia. And they were nomadic people. They traveled. They didn't settle lands. They only lived there enough time to raise their animals and farm, and then they moved on. And they roamed all through the steppes of Asia. And in the far west, they settled the area of what is now Ukraine, Iran, northern Iran, Turkey, and so forth. And in the ancient Greek time, or the 850 BCE time, they were traveling nomads, and that's who the Amazons descended upon. We're at the end of the video. I'll continue on with our history lesson in part 3, but here's where the break occurred. And so we'll be back. See you in part 3, and thank you for watching.